When police finally confronted 24-year-old law student Theofilos Sechidis, they had no idea what he'd been hiding in his fridge. They were about to uncover one of the most disturbing crimes in Greek history. A crime so bizarre, it earned him the nickname the Greek Hannibal Lecter. But behind that nickname lies a story you've likely never heard. Before we get into today's case, please make sure to like this video and to subscribe for similar cases. And let me know, what are your thoughts on this case? So today's case takes us to the idyllic Greek island of Theofilos, where the peace was shattered in May 1996, when an entire family vanished. The mother, father, sister, grandmother and uncle of Theofilos Sechidis. 5 family members just gone. Details of his early life are scarce, but at the time Theofilos was a 24-year-old law student and was known to have a quiet demeanour. After finishing high school, it's reported that his behaviour started to change. It started to become concerning. Theofilos' older sister, Emmy, suffered with severe schizophrenia, also around high school age. Her condition took a great toll on the family. Initially they had her institutionalised, but they didn't want the locals to know of her condition, so they tried to hide it and keep her confined at home. On occasions though, Emmy would escape into the streets and act erratically, which caused the neighbours to speculate that she was using substances. Mental health was so taboo and stigmatised at the time that the family were happier for them to speculate this rather than knowing about her schizophrenia. So when Theofilos' behaviour deteriorated during his studies, the family were growing concerned that maybe he too was suffering mentally, that maybe history was repeating itself. Theofilos' dad Demetrius was running out of ideas to control his son's behaviour, so he reached out to his brother Vasilis for some help. Vasilis had his own life and family in Belgium, but Demetrius felt maybe Theofilos' uncle may be able to convince him to speak to a psychiatrist. Willing to give it a try, Uncle Vasilis agreed and travelled to Greece. Theofilos hadn't seen his uncle in years, so his sudden arrival came as quite a shock. But still, in an effort to reconnect, the two arranged a walk at the Acropolis of Laminas on the 19th of May. But it was following this encounter that communication with the entire Sechidis family just suddenly stopped. Back in Belgium, Vasilis' wife, Eleni, was growing uneasy. The couple had spoke every single day without fail, but weeks had now passed without a single letter or a call from her husband. Whenever Eleni tried to phone the house phone, only Theofilos would answer. But his story would change. One minute he claimed that Vasilis had gone on a trip to Italy, and the next he insisted that his parents, grandmother and sister had all emigrated to Germany. By early August, Eleni's doubts could no longer be ignored, so she travelled to Greece with her son, determined to find her husband herself. But when she was face to face with Theofilos, his behaviour only deepened her suspicions. He even joined the search for the very relatives that he told everyone were overseas, a move that was meant to reassure her and was meant to suggest worry, but it only made her more certain that something was terribly wrong. His erratic answers, his contradictions, it all led Eleni to the police. She filed a missing person report, warning investigators that she feared the family may have been murdered. On the 8th of August 1996, after nearly 3 months of deceiving locals and his aunt Eleni, Theofilos was finally arrested. Under the pressure of a night-long interrogation, his composure cracked. He confessed not only to killing all 5 family members, but also to what he did to their bodies afterwards. According to his account, on the morning of the 19th of May, when Theofilos went for a walk with his uncle Vasilis, Theofilos claims an argument broke out between the two, and believing that his uncle intended to kill him, Theofilos pushed his uncle off the 10-metre cliff. Theofilos told investigators he noticed that his uncle was bleeding, and so not to be tortured any longer, he removed his head. He then hid his body in some bushes nearby, went to the store to buy a new shirt and a shotgun, before returning home to wait for the rest of his family. Demetrius, Theofilos' dad, arrived home first at around 7:30 p.m. Another argument erupted, and Theofilos claimed that his father was holding a knife. As Demetrius turned towards the bathroom, Theophilus fired a single shot to the back of his head, followed by a fatal wound to his neck. Roughly just 15 minutes later, his mum Maria and sister Emmy arrived home. Theophilus recalls that his mum was also holding a knife, and after asking where her husband was, he unarmed his mum, inflicting another fatal neck injury. His sister Emmy obviously heard this commotion and rushed at her brother armed with an ashtray, but Theophilus stabbed her in the chest. Theophilus then removed Marie and Emmy's heads, the heads of his mum and his sister. He reportedly cleaned up a little before going to sleep with his deceased family members close by. The following morning, his grandmother, who's also called Hermione, arrived at his door. She spoke to the family every single day, and when her calls went unanswered that morning, she decided to visit in person, but she too would never leave that house alive. Unfortunately, she saw the same fate as Marie and Emmy. Having now killed 5 family members, 4 of which were in his house, he planned on how to dispose of their bodies. Theophilus bought multiple rows of bin bags from different stores so not to draw any attention. Then back at his house of horrors, he listened to Tchaikovsky while dismembering his family's bodies with a hacksaw and a chainsaw. He recalls spending one day dismembering, one day bagging, and then one day transporting the bags. He took 3 trips to Kavala landfill, disposing the bags and hiding the evidence, but not before removing 2 or 3 of the victims' brains, placing them on a plate and storing them in the fridge to study later. But he told investigators that he didn't get a chance to study the brains, as the fridge had actually been broken, forcing him to dispose of them after decomposing for a week. With all of this shocking information, police made their way to the Sechidis home, not quite knowing what to expect. But what they did uncover only confirmed Theophilus' story. The scene was like that of a horror film. There was dried blood everywhere, tissue on the ceiling, and remnants left behind in the fridge. The word mistake was also written on a wall in blood. Investigators eventually found Vasilis' body at the bottom of the cliff as described. The following morning, on the 9th of August, Theophilus was taken to both scenes, the cliff and his home, where he calmly carried out reenactments of all 5 murders. Tragically, there were no signs of the victims' bodies at the landfill, preventing any hopes of a proper burial for the victims. So what on earth would drive a 24-year-old law student to murder and dismember 5 of his family members? Theophilus claims that he had one day overheard his parents discussing that Marie wasn't actually his real mum, and believes that they hadn't been telling him the truth. Despite them denying these claims, Theophilus believed that his full family were conspiring to kill him, especially once his mental health symptoms arose, and the whole stigma behind it. He believed, and I quote, "They wanted me out of the way, and I managed to kill them first." He claimed that he acted in self-defence, and he's never shown any remorse for his actions, fully believing that he did what he needed to do. What's even more chilling is that Theophilus had actually been arrested after the murders, but for a completely different incident. On the 21st of July, just 2 months after the murders, he was stopped at a police roadblock where his car was searched and police discovered his shotgun, and they arrested him for the possession of a firearm. He was sentenced to 10 months in prison and fined 700,000 drachmas, which is roughly £1,800 or $2,500 today. But with no prior criminal record, they soon released him. The police had just unknowingly let a mass murderer walk free. Finally, a year after the murders, on the 20th of June 1997, Theophilus was sentenced to 5 life sentences. There was also reports of him receiving another 7.5 years for his offences with the firearms. While leaving the courtroom, he smirked while telling the journalists, "Smile, it's contagious." Following his conviction, Theophilus was monitored for 5 months at Korydallos Prison Psychiatric Hospital. He was diagnosed with schizotypal personality disorder, but doctors concluded that he was fully aware of his actions and that he didn't require any treatment. A CT scan was also conducted, which showed brain abnormalities, which just confirmed results of an earlier test from 1992, which was conducted after regular violent outbursts. This had shown cerebral findings that just couldn't be characterised as normal. Then later, in 2010, Theophilus' condition was actually updated to schizophrenia, and 6 years after this, in 2016, he requested release which was denied. Then another 3 years later, on the 12th of February 2019, after years of heart problems, Theophilus was found dead in the prison bath. He had suffered a fatal cardiac arrest after having difficulty breathing. He had spent 21 years in prison with not a single visit from friends or family, and rightfully so. I guess we'll never fully know the truths behind Theophilus' claims. Was there really a conspiracy within his own family, or was it just the result of a severe mental health break? One detail that I thought was particularly strange was his insistence that almost every family member was holding a knife when he killed them. Could this have just been a convenient way to justify his actions, or was it a genuine belief shaped by paranoia? Let me know what you think.